Hello, everybody. I don't normally do a lot of these videos anymore because I really haven't had a lot to say and I've been very busy. However, as a human being and as a fan of professional wrestling, which sometimes those don't always cross, I have to say something about Hulk Hogan being readmitted into the World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE's Hall of Fame, and also he'll be back on TV real soon. And I don't even know what to really think or how to process this because I don't have to watch WWE. I respect a lot of the performers, particularly a lot of the younger people and the ladies who have stepped up lately. But it's really difficult to have a moral compass and still, support WWE either financially or just as a fan. I think that sometimes people have to put decency above their desire to be entertained. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Now, before I even begin, there's a couple of things I do want to say. One, that I'm not someone who's easily offended. I grew up a child of the 70s and 80s. I grew up watching shows like All in the Family and Good Times and Sanford and Son and the Jeffersons and all that Norman Lear stuff that wasn't afraid of dealing with issues of race, class, and gender and having frank and honest discussions. Even beyond that, um, I'm not someone who's easily offended in general. And if you're an African American or black fan of professional wrestling in the United States, you have to have a thick skin to put up with all the nonsense that they've thrown in your direction over the years. And I mean, for every, I feel like strong black male character like Bad News Brown or Bad News Allen, whatever you want to call him, or even a dude who very few people remember, but a guy out of Mid-South called Savannah Jack. For every like normal black dude who just gets in there, like a Ron Simmons back in the day, you'd always had like a Kamala, or some other ridiculous street ghetto stereotype. Because either you were an African bush tribesman or you were a street thug if you were a black wrestler for a very long time. And I kind of feel that if you're a black fan of wrestling, you just have to accept that pro wrestling, particularly the Southern variety, and particularly pro wrestling in general, has always been about 10 to 20 years behind the rest of society. And there are moments of progressive behavior like Sputnik Monroe or even some of the more recent stuff with the women's division in the WWE and other companies. But generally speaking, black wrestlers have just been problematic. And the imagery of black wrestlers have been problematic. I mean, I've dealt with stuff like D-Generation X's blackface angle. We've dealt with, probably the worst thing I ever saw in my life, which was the Triple H and Booker T, the people like you don't become championship angle, feud, whatever you want to call it, that culminated in Triple H beating Booker T at WrestleMania. And not only that, but it flew in the face of like 120 years of heel face booking logic to have someone say racist shit and then still win over the black babyface character. That didn't make any sense. And it still doesn't make any sense to me unless there's obviously some kind of agenda behind that, but I'm not even going to get into that. So let's just talk about Hulk Hogan. I think what's happening in our culture, and particularly people in my generation, I have to call out my generation, folks who are children of the 70s and 80s, we are so stuck in wanting to recapture our childhood. I don't know if it's because we weren't properly prepared for the world by our parents' generation, the baby boomers. I don't know if it's because we're afraid of just dealing with the current world head on. But I definitely feel like people between the ages of like 35 and 55 right now, we all want to feel like we were 10 years old again. We all want to feel like whatever it is that made us feel safe and protected and entertained as a child, we want to recapture that feeling instead of just accepting that those are memories. And you see this with pop culture, like Star Wars fans have been trolling, Kelly Tran, who played Rose in the Star Wars in The Last Jedi, to the point where this young lady has gotten off of Instagram because she was trolled by racist Star Wars fans who blamed diversity for why they didn't like The Last Jedi. I mean, you see this angry, bitter, troll-like attitude of wanting things to be how they used to be. It is completely, you know, infiltrated and compromised pop culture discourse or just American discourse. People just don't want to grow up. And there are fans out there, especially wrestling fans, who, on some bizarre level, want to feel like they are 10 and 15 or even 6 years old again. How Hulk Hogan made me feel as a kid, which is why I'm still walking around wearing Team Hogan shirts. I mean, I was watching some pay-per-view the other day, and I saw a guy dressed like Hulk Hogan. It says, "I'm with Hogan." And he had a Team Hogan placard. And I'm thinking to myself, what is wrong with people? Is your desire to feel like a kid again overriding your basic common sense and dignity and decency? I mean, I'm just going to say an excerpt of what Hogan said on that tape. Now, obviously, we all say ridiculous things behind closed doors. I can tell you this. I've gotten angry with certain racial groups. I've gotten angry with certain people in from certain economic backgrounds, but I have never sat in bed after having sex and started just saying, I hate Jews or Asians need to go. I mean, I don't understand how, those things come together. But here's a little snippet of what Hogan said. He said, I quote, "I mean, I'd rather if she," we're talking about Brooke, his daughter, "was going to fuck some nigger. I'd rather have her marry an 8 foot tall nigger worth $100 million. Like a basketball player. I guess we're all a little racist. Fucking nigger." End quote. I'm just going to let that sit for a second. Who in their right motherfucking mind can listen to that and be like, yeah, it's quite all right. Let's just bring them on back. If you do the research into the man he was talking about, the black gentleman in question was the son of a black billionaire. This was not some street thug or someone who, quote unquote, wasn't worthy of Brooke. It was a guy who was from money. Wouldn't you want to have a rich black man whose father was a billionaire in the family? Or was just good old fashioned racism? Didn't matter how much money he had, he's still just a nigger. And a lot of people feel that way. Clearly, because at this point, we now have people calling into popular wrestling shows on Sirius. I mean, Busted Open is one of my favorite shows. Only reason I have a Sirius XM subscription is because of Busted Open. So, I mean, I like Howard Stern and all that other stuff, but I really enjoy listening to good wrestling talk. And I hear these fans call in, and they're all like, "Oh, it's all right. Let's move on. Let's get past this. He's paid his time, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, man, look, if he had said, "Boy, I don't want my daughter to be dating some fucking Jew. I wish I could put him in an oven." And I don't feel this way, but I'm just trying to make an equivalency here. Would everybody be so willing to forgive it? I just feel that, I mean, it's quite clear that African Americans are thoroughly disrespected. Our lives are just simply not worth as much as other people's lives. And we know this at this point. It is well documented that nobody really cares when we get hurt or when we die. Not nobody, but you get what I'm saying. Now, beyond that, my overall feeling right now is you got to grow up. You got to let it go. Just because someone made you feel good as a child and their exploits entertained you within a certain context, it doesn't mean that they should be absolved of any moral guilt or any guilt, period. I'll give you an example. Now, in the African American community, I'm going to make a broad blanket statement here. If there was a Mount Rushmore of black people, we would have Jesus Christ was brown, regardless of what you think. You would have Jesus Christ, Martin Luther King, Stevie Wonder, and Bill Cosby. Right? Bill Cosby is now off of that for me. And you have to understand, Bill Cosby meant the world to me as an African American child growing up in a vacuum of positive black imagery outside of my family or my neighborhood. If you turned on TV back in the 80s, black folk were not presented very well. And some of that was on purpose. And Bill Cosby came along and changed the whole paradigm of what blackness meant in pop culture, but also just what blackness meant in America. He showed the mirror of what black people always knew, is that most of us are hardworking, we don't commit crimes, we have good families, right? And Bill Cosby now is erased from my heart and soul. Not because I personally hate him, but I cannot, in good conscience and good faith, support someone that drugged and raped women. And I'm not saying what Hogan did is the same, because it's clearly not. I mean, saying horrible things is a lot different than doing horrible things. And I want to make that clear. But I do believe that at some point in time, when you're an adult and when you're a grown up, you absolutely have to take a stand, draw a line in the sand about what's right and wrong. And right now, what Hogan did was wrong. What he said was wrong. And I don't know if his so-called sadness and shame about this incident is because he was caught, or because he actually does believe that he was wrong and he wants to make amends. I don't know. Hogan has consistently been selfish, has hurt other people's careers. Clearly, there's something very narcissistic, and I guess I'm trying to think of the right words. I don't know if he's self-hating or self-loathing, but there's definitely something broken inside of that man. And racism may not be a result of him being broken. Racism might just be something he's managed to keep under control for the sake of making money and having fans. And by the WWE accepting him back, what message are they actually sending? I mean, they just signed a $1 billion deal with Fox for, SmackDown and other stuff to be, on Fox networks in the future. So clearly there's a business side of it, but I don't know how you can positively spin reintroducing someone who holds such horribly racist views back into the fold. It doesn't matter how many times he goes in the back and apologizes to all the wrestlers he offended. What about all the fans? What about all the little black kids who grew up idolizing you? And not just black folks, but kids, period. The same way Bill Cosby not only touched black kids, but Latinos and Asians and Native Americans, white folks, everybody. Hogan touched a lot of people's lives as a kid. The difference is he offended a portion of that fan base, and a lot of the white fans are completely okay with what he said. Because if you're saying let's move on, that means you don't have a problem with what that man said. And in a way, you are not only excusing racism, you're also condoning racism by not at least admitting on a very fundamental level this was morally reprehensible, and just not even me judging. You just don't say that kind of stuff. So my overall feeling is that fans, obviously I'm just one dude with one opinion. I can't stop WWE. I won't stop it. I don't know if I can continue watching it. So I don't know if my withdrawing my fandom in dollars will make any kind of difference. But you got to take a stand sometime. And who do you want to stand with? What side of history do you want to stand on? We're in a very perilous time where racism and bigotry has not made a comeback, but it's clearer than ever that America has a race problem, right? Every week, at least twice a week for the last 7 to 8 weeks, there's been video or audio recordings of white folks calling the police on black people who are not doing anything wrong. There are still unarmed blacks being shot in the back by police officers all the time, at least 2 or 3 times a month, if not every once a week. So we clearly have a problem. And when you are willing to excuse flat out nonsense asshole bigotry for the sake of wanting to be entertained, what does that say about you, your mind, and your heart? And that's all I really have to say. Ask yourself that question. Why are you okay with this? And that's all I really have to say. I hope that, Hogan, if you ever do hear this, I mean, you have to know you hurt a lot of people by saying what you said. I know it was in the privacy of your home after you were having sex with your best friends or one of your buddies' wives or whatever. I'm not, and it's none of my business. I don't really care about that. But the moment that said all that nigga stuff and nigga this and nigga that, and it's all because of your daughter, which is kind of a weird, creepy thing anyway. But man, it's just not right. And you can apologize, but it shouldn't have never happened to begin with. And I'm not going to say that I'm a perfect person because I'm not. But at the very least, I know what I don't do and I know what I don't say. And I would never be laying in bed making these horribly racist comments about anybody just because I was angry about something or had a rough week or a rough month or a rough year. That doesn't excuse lapses in common sense, judgment, and just moral decency. Thank you for your time if you watch this. Take care, everybody.